welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to do a sit-down video and we're going to talk about Christmas.
This is something that we're thinking of doing kind of like on a twice a month basis or maybe once a month basis, so we don't have too much on us. But we want to kind of do like a little bit of a Bible study about a contemporary topic or something that's happening. Unfortunately, we wanted to get this out for Christmas time, but we weren't able to. We just had too much family and friends who were free at that time being able to visit all at once. So we were not able to get to it until now, and it turned out to be a much bigger study than I expected. So after a lot of time and effort, we're going to delve a little bit into Christmas and why we don't celebrate it.
John 4:24 says, "The Father is the Spirit, and they that worship Him must worship Him in spirit and in truth."
So we're told to worship the Father in truth. Now there is only one truth, and that means that we need to be open to the possibility that we may have been doing something wrong our entire lives and not realizing it. But we also must be willing to change our ways so that we can earnestly worship Him in spirit. So just a little bit of a background. Both of us used to celebrate Christmas, actually.
Yeah, so when we're talking to you about this, we're not here to judge you, but instead we're here to enlighten you about the truth, because the truth will set us all free.
Whee! All right.
After seeing this video, I hope that you guys would check us and read all the verses that we present to you. You should do your own research and see what God says about Christmas and about the things that we will tell you today.
So in the end, it does not matter what you say or what I say or what she says, what he says, what they say. It matters what God says. All right. So to start off, we're going to go into the New Testament. What do we find in the New Testament? What does the Bible say about practices like Christmas?
We're going to start by reading Mark 7:6-9.
And he said to them, "Well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. In vain do they worship me, teaching as doctrines the commandments of man. You leave the commandment of God and hold to the tradition of man." And he said to them, "You have a fine way of rejecting the commandment of God in order to establish your tradition."
Now, so just a little bit of background. Jesus is talking to the Pharisees. They had just criticized his disciples for eating before they washed their hands. And according to their traditions and customs, you were supposed to wash your hands before you ate. So Jesus at this point is basically telling them that you are so focused on maintaining your man-made traditions that you're forgetting to observe the traditions that God commanded you to observe. So we'll go to another verse up in Colossians 2:8.
Colossians 2:8 says, "Beware lest anyone cheat you through philosophy and empty deceit, according to the tradition of men, according to the basic principles of the world, and not according to the Messiah."
Basically, again, do not fall prey to the traditions of man, as they can conflict with God's principles and commandments. Now, that's not to say that some traditions are all evil. Not all traditions are bad, obviously. Some are good, but you want to check and make sure that if you're going to participate in a tradition or even start your own traditions, make sure that they are biblically allowable. So something that we should get into is Christmas was never commanded. We aren't even told Jesus' birthday. So we're starting off, that itself means that Christmas is a man-made tradition. Even Jesus did not celebrate it. So something we should bring up is the question, when was Jesus born? So we can find that in Luke chapter 2, verses 1-4 and 8. I'm going to summarize this, but basically the Romans had ordered for a census to be taken. Now, that required everyone to return to their hometown. Now, Romans were all about their efficiency, and believe it or not, it actually gets really cold during the wintertime. So we know the Romans would not have made it where their census that would require everyone to travel on the roads, they wouldn't have made it during the wintertime when the roads are in bad conditions and when it's really cold outside. Additionally, in verse 8, we find that the shepherds were out tending to their flocks. Now, how many of you guys would want to be outside in the very bitter cold tending to your flock? You wouldn't be during the wintertime.
Yeah.
So we know from that alone, we know that his birthday was not in December. It was not December 25th. It was not anywhere in the month of December. It was probably sometime between August, September, or October in the fall, especially when you had the harvest coming in, so people could glean from the fields if they needed to. Now that we've seen what the New Testament says, let's take a look at what the Old Testament says. So we're going to read Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 2.
Thus says the Lord, learn not the way of the nations, nor be dismayed at the signs of the heavens, because the nations are dismayed at them.
So basically, we're commanded not even to learn about heathen or pagan traditions or practices, much less are we supposed to follow them. Something that you guys should also be made aware of is, at that time, most of the pagan religions had polytheistic tendencies. Actually, all of them did. There was not a single one that I can think of that had a monotheistic religion. And all of these stem from having a father god, a mother goddess, and a son of God. So this is where you get into polytheism. And we're going to learn a little bit more about where those arise in the account of Nimrod. First, though, we want to read to you Deuteronomy chapter 12, verses 28 through 31.
Guard and hear all these words which I command you, that it may go well with you, and with your children after you forever, when you do that which is good and right in the sight of the Father. Verse 30, take heed to yourself that you not be snared by following them, after they are destroyed before you, and do not inquire after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? I shall do the same. 31 says, you shall not do so unto the Father, for every abomination to the Father, which he hates, have they done to their own gods.
So some of those I do clip out a couple of the words in between, and when we post this you'll be able to see it. But go in and read that yourself, and you're going to see basically what we just said. So just to kind of summarize what this is saying, we're told to do what God the Father says, and he will be pleased with our worshiping of him. If we don't worship in the manner that he's instructed for us to, he's going to be quite upset with it. So in Deuteronomy chapter 12, verse 32, he tells us, whatsoever I command you to do, you shall do it. You are not to add to it or subtract from it. And that's a really big deal. You are not to add to God's commandments or take away from them.
So the question that we have to ask is that what happens if we adopt the ways of the heathen nations?
So to answer that, an example of what will happen, I would direct you to read Exodus chapter 32. And if you're curious what that is, that's the incidence of the golden calf. Basically, Moses goes up on Mount Sinai for 40 days, and he's gone. And the people are starting to wonder if he's even coming back. So the people get a little bit restless, and so they decide that they're going to worship God, their deliverer, their own way. So they take off all their golden jewels and earrings, and they melt them down, and they make this really nice looking golden calf, an idol, something that God expressly told them do not do. And so they claim that this is your Elohim, this is your God who brought you out of Egypt, bow down and worship it. And so God becomes infuriated. Now, bear in mind, these people were earnestly worshiping the deliverer who got them out of Egypt. They're very happy for it. However, they're worshiping him their own way, the way of the pagan nations that they're expressively forbidden to do. So what ends up happening? God gets furious, and he ends up killing at least 3,000 of them. Another example that I would like to point out, kind of a little more jovial or lighthearted, is Peter. So a lot of times, in our zeal and desire to worship God, we go a little bit over the top, just like with the golden calf. An example of this with Peter is when Jesus is washing Peter's feet, and Peter says, Lord, you shouldn't be washing my feet, I should be washing your feet. And Jesus explains to him why he must be the one to wash Peter's feet. And then Peter says, oh, well, all right then, wash my whole body. So, and Jesus chastises him for going over the top. So we have to remember to do what God says, don't add to it, and don't subtract from it. Enough is enough. You don't have to go overboard or underboard. Let's talk about
the history of Christmas.
Yeah.
Alright, it was celebrated long before Jesus was born, but it wasn't called Christmas. It was like a different pagan celebration during December 25.
I don't remember the time frame of when Nimrod existed, but Nimrod was the ruler of Babylon at one point, and his wife was named Semiramis. So at some point, Nimrod gets killed, and Semiramis, wanting to stay in power, claimed that Nimrod didn't actually die, but rather ascended and became the sun god. As the sun god, he was to be worshipped as Baal, or Baal, which you may recognize him as. Now, we hear about Baal many times in the Bible. So, she also claims that the rays from the sun god caused her to conceive and bear a child, a virgin birth. His name was to be Tammuz, the son of the sun god. And guess when he was born?
December 25.
December the 25th. Additionally, she also claimed that when Nimrod died, some of his blood fell onto a tree stump, an evergreen tree stump, and that overnight it grew into a full tree. So now we have the evergreen tree, which sounds a little familiar to the Christmas tree.
Mm-hmm.
And the tradition at that time was that this tree was to symbolize Nimrod's rebirth. And it's so popular in those pagan days that it's actually mentioned in Jeremiah.
Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 3 to 5 says, "For the customs of the people are vain, for one cuts a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They deck it with silver and gold, they fasten it with nails and with hammers, so it won't move. They are upright, but don't speak. They must be carried because they cannot move themselves." So this verse is talking directly about pagan practice of like bringing a tree inside your house and decorating it.
Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, they actually do have pine trees over there. This was something that was news to both of us. I didn't realize that they did, but they do. Something you guys should be made aware of is that this is one of the first times that we see what we call the Father God, the Mother God, and the Son of God. And this is the beginning of polytheism. Well, not the beginning of polytheism, but this is a polytheistic trait that you're going to see in a lot of pagan religions. You know, something that's crazy to believe is, in fact, there are other gods that were supposedly born on December 25th, or that you celebrate on December 25th. Now, these happened way before Jesus was born.
Mm-hmm.
Hundreds of years before Jesus was born. Just to name a few. From Persia, we have Mithra. From Egypt, we have Osiris. From Rome, we have Helios, or Sol. And there are a whole bunch of others that are debated whether or not they happen exactly on December 25th, or if they happen in some part close to the winter solstice. But there's actually a fair number of these. Many of them have virgin births and take place on the winter solstice, just like the classic tale of Jesus being born on December 25th, which we know could not have been his birthday because of those verses we mentioned in Luke. So the question is, why do Christians celebrate Christmas as being the birth of Jesus on December 25th, which is the birth for all these other pagan gods? Well, to learn about that, we have to go back into some history. You may be familiar with Saturn, the planet. Well, there's actually a Roman god called Saturn, the god of agriculture. There is a celebration that used to be celebrated in Rome called Saturnalia. In Saturnalia, which was a celebration of Saturn, the Romans would celebrate starting on December 17th for 7 days, culminating on the winter solstice of December the 25th. Some of the things that they would do during this big festival was gambling, singing, playing music, feasting, socializing, giving each other gifts, decorating their homes with wreaths and other greenery. That sounds kind of similar to Christmas, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly just like Christmas celebrations. Now, sun god worship was very widely popular when the Christian movement was spreading. In 274, the Roman Emperor Aurelian wanted to make a new cult, the cult of Sol. Sol Invictus, the main divinity of the Roman pantheon. So basically, Sol Invictus directly translates to unconquered sun. So that was going to be the new main god of the Roman pantheon. Now, he wanted to give all the people a single deity that they could worship without betraying any of their own gods. It was kind of a way to unify the people who worship the sun as well as the Christians to worship the same God. And he dedicated a new temple for the cult on December, guess what? 25th. Now, after him, we have Constantine. You may have heard of Constantine. He's very famous in the development of the Christian faith, or at least the Christian religion. Constantine was also a Roman emperor. He also was a big-time sun god worshiper. At some point, he claimed to have a vision from the one true God. So what does he do? He meshes the sun god worships with Christianity. Once again, an effort to unify the people. In this case, Jesus was the sun god reborn, and Mary was the new mother goddess. Now, the events from this eventually lead to the Roman Catholic Church. Now, that might sound like terrifying if you're Catholic. I don't mean to insult you or anything, but if you look up the history, that is exactly what happens to create the Roman Catholic Church. Is this blending of the pagan Roman religion with the new Christian religion trying to merge together, and so this overlap region is what became the Roman Catholic Church. So with that, you can kind of see some of the background of where Christmas comes from. It does not have anything to do with the Bible. It has nothing to do with Jesus. Jesus commands us not to learn the ways and to follow the traditions of pagan practices. So even if you wanted to argue that December 25th, Christmas, is merely a celebration of Jesus' birthday, what biblical basis do you have to do that? Remember, we're not to add or to subtract from. We are not to worship God in our own ways. We are to do exactly what He said, and to follow Him in the spirit of truth, and to worship Him truthfully with our whole spirit. So because of that, Molly and I no longer celebrate Christmas, and instead we opted to celebrate Hanukkah, which is a holiday that is mentioned in the Bible, that Jesus himself celebrated. So we hope that you guys find this a bit illuminating. And once again, we don't want to offend anybody. We just want you guys to know the truth. And hopefully you guys will take it upon yourselves to look into this further. We're going to include a few links to some videos that we've watched that really helped us in our research for doing this video. I have to thank you guys for listening for this long-winded episode. Wasn't probably the most exciting one you've ever seen, but we hope that it was beneficial for you guys to see.
Alright, well, thank you so much for watching this video.
We appreciate you guys watching. Please leave a like and subscribe if you guys enjoy our videos, or let us know some other content that you would like us to address. And with that, that about wraps it up. Take care, y'all.